Ethan, we're rolling. Ethan! Ethan, wake up!
Oh my God, where am I? Oh, thanks, Drew. It's a bye week. I didn't realize I would be here right now. I guess we have a show to do. Guys, Skyler, Adam, wake up. Did you?
What?
Do you guys have any idea what we're doing here?
We have a show?
I guess we have a show to do, even though it's a bye week. Not usually something I'm accustomed to. What about you guys?
It's bizarre.
Yeah.
What are we going to do?
Well,
Camera's on.
I mean, there was a game last week, so I guess we got plenty of stuff to talk about. We'll just have to assess, what's going on the rest of the season.
Okay, I guess
All right, I guess we'll do it. It's Cuse Countdown. It starts right now. Hello and welcome inside the CitrusTV studios for another episode of Cuse Countdown. Ethan Frank with Skyler, Wilkes, and Adam Avin. It's a bye-week show. Syracuse isn't playing anyone this upcoming weekend, but a whole lot to talk about regarding the Orange football program, starting with last week, the toughest test of the season for the Orange, taking on number 4 Florida State in Tallahassee. Most talented program the Orange have seen all year, the most difficult coaching staff, and it went really poorly. The Orange lose 41-3.
It was just what everyone expected. The Seminoles completely outclassed the Orange. It was over from beginning to end.
Yeah, I mean, it was almost unwatchable when you got into the second half. I mean, the defense held on as long as they could, but the offense just couldn't get anything going, and FSU made a big play after big play. It was just enough.
Yeah, you think about the big plays in this game for Florida State. A guy like Keon Coleman, how dominant he was against the Syracuse secondary. And you look at the numbers. Jordan Travis throws for over 300 yards. Florida State rushes for nearly another 200 and doesn't turn the ball over once. And if you're Syracuse, going into this game knowing you're not the most talented team, you have to play a perfect game to win at a place like Doak Campbell Stadium, and they played far from it.
I mean, you said it. They have to be aggressive when you play against a top ACC opponent like that, and not just a top ACC opponent, one of the top 4 teams in all of the NCAA. And so Jordan Travis was having a field day out there, and Syracuse just couldn't compete because they weren't being aggressive. It was like they were afraid, which I guess you should be, but you got to perform a little bit.
You're absolutely right, Adam, and especially it was more than just dominant. The 9th most passing yards allowed by the Orange all time, most since 2018. Jordan Travis, the 6th most passing yards he's thrown in a game. He made it look easy. Jaheim Bell, the transfer tight end, he made it look easy, and Keon Coleman, even with his one-handed catch, looked pretty special out there. He probably secured himself a first-round draft pick based off that catch alone.
It was one of the best catches I've ever seen.
It was 100% on the SportsCenter top 10 plays later on Saturday night. You guys talked about how effective Jordan Travis was throwing the football. Keon Coleman was his top target, but there's a reason he was open so much, and that's because the Syracuse secondary, especially over the past few weeks, has really struggled. Allowed a broken coverage touchdown to Clemson. Drake May absolutely diced up the Syracuse secondary, and then it was more of the same from Travis, Adam.
Yeah, I honestly think the defense hasn't fully been that bad. I mean, I know it hasn't been great, and when you look at the final score of the past 3 games, they've been complete blowouts. But let's look at those points of where the other teams were before the half. 21 with Clemson before the half, 27 points from UNC before the half, and 17 points with the Seminoles leading into halftime. I think the Syracuse defense did an all right job of keeping themselves in the game. It's more of the offense that needed to help them climb back in the second. But when Dino Babers is letting his defense stay out there the whole game, they're going to get tired, and by the end of the game, they're just going to be completely worn out, and the score is going to look way worse than I think it actually is.
Syracuse's defense is the only thing keeping them alive right now. The offense has looked stagnant, it's looked slow, it's looked really bad and disheveled overall, all around. This secondary, though, Ethan, you touched on it, they're the worst passing defense in the entire ACC, and obviously it exemplifies it when you play against talented quarterbacks like Drake May and Jordan Travis, but you got to put up a little more of a fight. We look at what happened last week, 2 weeks ago against UNC, that Kobe Paysour touchdown. What was Elijah Clark doing? He allowed that 78-yard touchdown when he had an interception right in his hands. It's completely unacceptable, and Rocky Long is a better defensive coordinator than what this product is showing.
40-plus points in back-to-back weeks is not what's going to cut it for Syracuse's defense. And you think of the coverage in the secondary. And there's a reason these guys are having to cover for so long. It's because Syracuse's pass rush is not winning at the line of scrimmage. You think of the size on the Syracuse defensive line, a guy like Kevon Darton, who's playing undersized. If the Orange pass rush is not going to get home, specifically when they only rush 3 or 4 guys, it's going to be a huge problem for the secondary.
Well, to be honest, Ethan, I think the pass rush has done a pretty solid job overall. They're one of the top sacking teams in the ACC, and when you have that 3-3-5 defense, the linebackers are blitzing from everywhere. There's different packages. That's why Leon Lowry leads the team in sacks, is because those linebackers get after them differently. What the problem is, the defensive line is not being effective in the run game. Too many tackles made by the secondary and the linebackers. They're not getting good enough pushing. Yes, Kevon Darton's undersized, so is Caleb Okechukwu. Got to put up a much tougher fight in the trenches.
Yeah, I mean, they got to get more stops than they're getting right now, especially when you're going up against those big opponents. I mean, Caleb Okechukwu, four tackles for loss, 2 QB hits. He's our best defensive lineman, as far as I'm concerned, and he needs to push as much as he can. Let's not forget that, like Ethan said, the scheme is a 3-3-5, so we are only blitzing or sending 3 guys to the quarterback each time. So that's just the scheme that Rocky Long and that Syracuse has had for a few years now. And like you said, Skyler, they're blitzing linebackers to try and confuse the offense. But if the run game if they're not getting stops in the run game either, then it really doesn't make a difference. I need to see this Syracuse defense tighten up down there so we can stay in some games.
So speaking of blitzing, the problem is that if a blitz is sent, then there's less people to cover in the secondary. Everything really goes hand in hand. Speaking of coverage in the secondary, Garrett Shrader has had a really hard time for the Syracuse offense trying to find his receivers down the field, especially over the past few weeks, Skyler.
It's been tough to watch, Ethan, and last week against Florida State was no exception. A season-low 99 passing yards, under 50% completion. He's earned an interception in all but 2 games this year. He has just not been the quarterback that the Orange need him to be.
Yeah, I mean, the biggest thing with me is, and I feel like at this point we know what Schrader's arm talent is. He's not a guy that's going to throw it super far down the field like a Jordan Travis or a Drake May, or even a Cade Klubnik. What's been fun about Shrader has been his running ability. I mean, we saw it against Purdue, 195 rushing yards. We have barely seen design runs in the last 4 games since Purdue. I want to see that Shrader come back because that was really the only thing that was keeping us in those games when the offense looked bad against Purdue, which wasn't a good defense at all. So he needs to start running the ball again, or Jason Beck needs to start doing something different because the passing game isn't working right now.
It's the same old theme with Garrett Shrader, starting the season really strong, just like we saw in 2022, and then in 2023, as the year goes along, play is starting to decrease in the level of efficiency and how well the Syracuse offense is playing. So for more on Shrader, let's send things over to Skyler to break it all down.
Ethan, Garrett Shrader has certainly struggled the last 3 games, but none worse than last time out against Florida State, where he threw for a season-low 99 yards. Now, there's a variety of reasons behind those difficulties, and yes, those opposing defenses have been good, but for Shrader, it's more before the ball is even snapped. And if you look here, 3rd down at his own 30-yard line, 2 receivers at the top of the screen, plus the running back, Allen. That's the strong side of the field. That's where you'd like him to go with the ball. But instead, when it's snapped, his eyes don't even go that way. He's looking at Damian Alford the whole time. He doesn't even see Dan Villari wide open in the flat. He throws a jump ball that looks like it should have been a fade at the goal line, and it falls incomplete. That's been way too common for Shrader this season. He's cueing the defenses in. You could see the safety over the top there was there the entire time, and even against a 6'2 corner like Azariah Thomas, that had no chance from the get-go. You look at his ACC counterparts like Jordan Travis, same exact situation. 3rd down in his own territory. He gets the snap, and what happens here? He looks right and delivers a 27-yard strike to Jaheim Bell for a 1st down, who gets up and does a little celebrating because he had a season-high 87 yards on the day. Look, pressure comes, looks right, not there. Looks back in the middle and delivers a perfect spiral right at Bell. Stephen Thompson, not bad defense, but that's what separates Jordan Travis from Garrett Shrader and what diminishes Shrader from the rest of the quarterbacks in the ACC. Doesn't have the accuracy, doesn't have the arm strength, and doesn't have the decision making. And so Ethan, he can blame food poisoning all he wants, but it's been the same thing all season long.
Schrader is just one part of an offense that has not been clicking over the past few weeks. We'll break down everything that's gone wrong for the Orange over the past couple of weeks on the offensive end of the field right after this. Welcome back to Cuse Countdown. Ethan Frank with Adam, Avin, and Skyler Wilkes inside the CitrusTV studios, bringing out everything going on with Syracuse football during its bye week. Talk a little bit about the offense earlier in the show, specifically Garrett Schrader, a unit that has not played well over the past few weeks. But when asked after the Florida State 38-point loss about his group moving forward, Dino Babers is still confident.
The things they're going to improve in the offense is the defenses that they're going against. All of a sudden, those passes, they're going to be knocked down where guys were wide open, and all you saw was the defensive lineman knocking the pass down without jumping to show you how long they are. Now those passes are going to go through, and we're going to find out if the receiver's going to catch the ball or not. But those receivers were open. You're going to see more time based off who the D-lines you're playing. The quarterback's going to be able to make more decisions, second, third, fourth decision. I'd be very surprised if the offense does not go back to exactly the way it looked previously. That's what I'm anticipating.
So Dino's doing a lot of selling here, guys, but how much are you buying of it?
I'm not buying any of it, Ethan, and why should we? This offense has looked awful the last 3 weeks, and what makes you think that just because you're not playing Florida State anymore, that it's suddenly going to transform back into its old self? You're not playing Colgate, you're not playing Army, you've got still ACC opponents ahead.
I mean, I like Dino the leader, but some things have to change. He was laughing after the game about some of the catches Keon Coleman had, so Syracuse needs to tighten up some things.
Early in the season, when Syracuse was playing teams like Colgate and Western Michigan, the offense was absolutely humming, and that was expected, Skyler, and now things have changed for the worse.
You're absolutely right, Ethan, and it seems like they have no answers for anything that the defense throws at them. A lot of draw plays we saw from Garrett Schrader, called up by Jason Beck, that didn't work. LaQuinn Allen can only do so much. He ran for over 110 yards. Got to find other ways to move this offense along.
Yeah, I completely agree. I mean, we saw there's a Donovan Brown 86-yard touchdown. That was one of the only really big plays Syracuse had in those first two games against two really poor opponents. So it was good to see the offense get going. It would have been nice to see it over against the past three opponents.
Right, and you think about momentum moving forward. Syracuse took the way it played against Colgate and Western Michigan to Purdue, and then got a win at Purdue. Then takes that against Army. Starts really slow in the first half, but a huge second half, and the Orange get the win in that game. But maybe in those Purdue and Army games, we should have read between the lines a little bit more, and that the Orange's struggles, Adam, were an indicator of what was to come.
Yeah, I mean, you said it. They started off slow in that Army game. I mean, the team looked poor in that first half. They were just strolling along. It was so dull out there. And in the second half, they had some life. We saw it last year in week 4 against Purdue when they had that big fourth quarter comeback, right? But this team needs to put together a bunch of drives throughout the games that can stay in it. We saw it last week against FSU where nothing worked. So they got to start earlier and get the ball rolling. And we saw it in Army. We haven't seen it since.
You talk about starting the game. If you don't remember, they were losing at halftime against Army. And I know that the Black Knights took up much of possession in that first half, but Syracuse looks lost against really disciplined teams. You have to remember, that team, they commit a lot of penalties, and against a disciplined team like Army, you're playing more disciplined teams up ahead. You got to get control of your guys.
And then you get to ACC play after those two games, and things have gone from a little unpredictable to completely off the rails with the Syracuse train. It has just been a complete, really, embarrassment on offense over the past 3 weeks.
They've consistently gone down in total yardage, and it went up a little from Florida State to UNC, but nothing is working. LaQuinn Allen barely got going last week, and before that, they scored 1 touchdown. I mean, they've been outscored by almost 90 points in this 3-game skid. There's no other way to, I mean, it is inexplicable at that point.
100%. Syracuse's roster is not big enough, they're not strong enough, they're not as fast to go up against some of the other top teams in the ACC. And let's be honest, Syracuse might have had one of the hardest 3-game stretches in all of college football, especially when you look within the ACC. Clemson, UNC, FSU is really hard, and they just didn't fare well at all.
And you look at the future schedule now. Syracuse has played 3 ACC games. That means there's 5 to go, 2 at home, 2 on the road, 1 at a neutral site against Pittsburgh. Adam, what are you looking at over these next 5 games with this schedule?
Well, that one game you mentioned last, Pitt, that's an important game. Last year, that game was in Pittsburgh. Syracuse ended up losing that one. This neutral site game, they have an advantage to take back what they lost last year. That game, November 11th, is going to be really important because Syracuse needs that win if they want to, at least in my estimation, make a bowl game. That's going to be one of those games where they need to fight back. Pitt is more talented than them, even though they haven't had a great year. They got to win that one.
I'm looking at the game right ahead of us on the docket here in Virginia Tech. We all remember what happened the last time Syracuse was down in Blacksburg, a thriller that the Orange came out on top in the last second. But this Hokie Steve had a tough start to the year, losses over Marshall and Purdue, but wins over Wake Forest. They have a quarterback in Kyron Drones, the transfer from Baylor, who is a really dangerous dual threat option. I expect that Hokie team to provide quite the challenge for Syracuse.
So you guys have analyzed a couple of the games on the Orange schedule that are coming up in the next few weeks, but I wanted to see you guys put your money where your mouth is a little bit. So over these 5 games, Syracuse at 4-3 right now. Where do you see them ending the season, Skyler?
I know we've been harping on them a lot. We sounded very negative, but I'm going positive with 8-4. This team
so
is
4-1 over the next 5 games.
It sounds crazy, but I am confident in this Syracuse team, but particularly because of who these opponents are. These are teams at the bottom of the barrel in the ACC. You have Boston College, who beat an FCS Holy Cross team by 3 points, beat Army by 3 points. They are not a particularly talented team overall. And Pitt is the same thing with a new quarterback at the helm. There's a lot of winnable games ahead for Syracuse.
I'm going to go back to last year when Syracuse lost against Clemson, and then the rest of the season was completely downhill. I'm afraid that this 3-game losing stretch for Syracuse has similar momentum like last year. I'm not so sure Syracuse is going to be able to pick it back enough to get 8 wins. That might be a hard task. I wouldn't be surprised if it comes down to the last game, 4th quarter, just like it did last year against BC, where they end up winning that game and they finish 7-5. That's what I'm going with.
I think you guys are crazy. I don't see a world in which this team wins more than 6 games based on the way they played over the last 3 contests. 8-4, Skyler. That is absolutely ridiculous. You mentioned they're playing the teams at the bottom of the barrel in the ACC. Syracuse is the bottom of the barrel in the Atlantic Coast Conference. I'm not so sure you can back that one up. Another team that's towards the bottom is NC State. That's where Robert Anae is the new offensive coordinator after he spent 1 year at SU last year. Tony White, the defensive coordinator who had done a really good job with the Syracuse defense over the past couple of seasons, is now at Nebraska. Both of those guys moved laterally, did not take head coaching jobs. Is there a reason Syracuse is struggling? Maybe because the coordinators left, Adam.
You know, I don't really know they're struggling because those coordinators left. We haven't really seen amazing results with the new coordinators that we have, even though they were kind of brought up with the same schemes. However, the coordinators that we did have last year, Robert Anae and Tony White, aren't having major success at their schools. Maybe Syracuse just needs to go in a different direction, change up the type of schemes that they've had the past 5 years.
They're the same system. I mean, you have Jason Beck is a direct disciple of Robert Anae. Tony White runs a 3-3-5, which Rocky Long started. There shouldn't be any fall off. The real fall off is the lack of talent that Syracuse has on this roster compared to last year.
Coordinators, maybe not the problem with Syracuse football, and there are a lot of problems to figure out. That's why the Orange have a bye week, to figure out those problems. We're going to be doing a whole lot more here on Cuse Countdown. We're heading over to the courthouse to decipher a couple of cases of the law against the Orange. We'll be right back on CC. Don't go anywhere.
Here's to the straggly ones, the lopsided ones, the first ones, the I miss my beard ones. And hey, I look good with this ones. But no way he's grown that in a week ones. The black, brown, red, and gray ones. That one. The itchy ones. The never forgotten ones. The ones grown by Dad. The ones grown for Dad. The started late ones. The absolutely filthy ones. The drawn on ones. The finger ones. The pin ones. The I nearly didn't do it this year ones. And the yeah, why not ones. They all raise awareness, raise funds, start conversations, and save lives. Because whatever you grow will save a bro. Learn more at Movember.com.
They call me Maxie, but I prefer tripod. I was your above-average four-legged homie, and then wham, bam, minivan. Some people pity me. Now that's lame. I still run, fetch, and swim. And the ladies love me. I'm the ultimate wingman. Just don't ask me to high five.
Order in the court. Welcome in to Countdown Courtroom. I am Judge Frank. Mr. Wilkes and Mr. Avin are our lawyers today. I've been doing a lot of homework, been watching a lot of movies, so we'll see if you guys can put on your best Mitch McDeere or Daniel Caffey impressions. I'm really excited to see if you can do that. So this is the Countdown Courtroom. Both of you lawyers know how this works. You'll address me as Judge Frank. Skyler, I'll start with you. Our first case, you're suing Garrett Schrader for malfeasance. You might need to explain what malfeasance is.
Yeah, malfeasance is the public wrongdoing of a public official, which I know Garrett Schrader technically isn't a public official, but he's public enough in the Syracuse size that he deserves to be charged with malfeasance. It has been a disastrous middle half of this season for Schrader. His passing yards are down, his rushing yards are down, he's throwing interceptions left and right. He has been completely unreliable for Syracuse at the helm. I mean, you gotta eat healthy too. You can't get food poisoning and let your team down either. He has just been the wrong option for Syracuse, and with him at the helm, they're going in the wrong direction.
Judge Frank, too many things have gone wrong for Syracuse to put this all on Garrett Schrader. The weapons aren't good, the offensive line collapses, the defense gives up 40 points a game, and we're going to blame this on Garrett Schrader? Garrett Schrader, yes, he's running, he ran the ball early. Lately it's been passing. Where are the design runs? Where has been the Garrett Schrader we know and love that we've seen throughout last year and the start of this year? Syracuse's offense has been bad. It is not fully his fault, but I would like to see a little bit more from Garrett Schrader.
That's a good defense, but we'll have to see what the jury says on the verdict on that case. All right, Adam, you'll be the prosecutor next, or Mr. Avin, excuse me. We're very formal in this court. You're suing Jason Beck for identity theft. What is the case against Mr. Beck?
This guy was claiming to be a protege of Robert Anae, who's now at NC State. Jason Beck has completely lost touch with what this offense is, or at least he's trying to go back to what it was before he got to Syracuse when he was at when they were taking deep shots with Brendan Strong in Virginia. Jason Beck wants Garrett Schrader to keep throwing the ball, but that's not what this offense is about. Like I said, we got to go back to the running. He is not the creative genius that we've seen in those first 4 games when we thought the offense was going to be super good. Yes, I know they were against bad defenses, but there was a little bit of hope. We need the Syracuse offense to go back to what they were, if there's any of that left.
Objection. I have an objection to that, and it's because that's absolutely ridiculous. Jason Beck is working with what he's got. Oronde Gadsden is gone. Isaiah Jones has been unhealthy. There's no talent left on this field. He can only make do with what he has. Garrett Schrader is just about as incompetent as a quarterback as they come, at least at the ACC level. Jason Beck can only do so much. If he's not going to look at other wide receivers that are open, there's nothing he can do.
Judge, are you going to allow Skyler?
Order in the court. Order in the court. We're gonna control things here. All right, we'll have to see what the jury says on that case either. But another strong defense here from Mr. Wilkes. All right, we'll go to you as the prosecution for this next case, suing Dino Babers for negligence, taking on the head man here. That's aggressive.
It is aggressive. That's why you can call me Harvey Specter. So Dino Babers has done a lot wrong in his tenure at Syracuse. You can talk about the NIL, you can talk about the lack of recruiting. Those aren't necessarily his fault. It's the decision making, the lack of time management, and the discipline issues. This team, remember when they kicked a 57-yard field goal 2-3 weeks ago in a close game? Yeah, that's not what good coaching is. And Dino Babers has done far too many of that in his time here in the Salt City. He's forgotten about and he's put himself above the rest of his team.
Mr. Wilkes, you're suing the wrong people. You're putting this on head coach Dino Babers when it needs to be put on the Syracuse football athletic program as a whole, maybe Syracuse athletics as a whole. We need to get better talent. We need the coaching to be better. We need everything to be better. You can't blame it all on Dino Babers. He's a good leader. We know that. We know what he's all about. Family, Ohana. But this Syracuse roster isn't what it is. The NIL thing needs to be fixed, and Syracuse has to bring in the talent.
Mr. Avin, this feels like a very strong prosecution. Feels like Mr. Babers could be negligent in that case. All right, our final case here in the court today on Countdown Courtroom. Adam, you are the prosecution for the final time, suing Syracuse's wide receivers for abandonment.
Yeah, I'm suing them for abandonment. Number one, because Aranda Gaston got injured and left Garrett Schrader in the Syracuse offense all by itself. He was the core of the whole thing. But the receivers right now on the field are getting no separation. They're not running their routes tight. They're getting a ton of drop balls too. They're not helping out Garrett Schrader, even though I know we've been talking about his passing ability. The wide receivers need to step up and do their job.
If Aranda Gadsden was on the field, this would be an entirely different story. Those receivers would truly blossom. We've seen what Umari Hatcher and Donovan Brown are capable of. They're talented kids. They're not ready to take that jump yet, and they need Aranda Gadsden. If he's there, entirely different story.
All right, we will see what the justices of the Supreme Court of the Countdown Courtroom have to say about these cases. We only got a little bit of time left here on Cuse Countdown, talking big picture about the Orange. When we come back, we'll be right back. Wrapping things up on Cuse Countdown, Ethan Frank with Skyler, Wilkes, and Adam Avin. Talked a lot about the Syracuse schedule earlier and what is to come. Dino Babers notorious late in the season for his teams playing bad on the road, and the recent numbers back that up, Skyler.
Ethan, it doesn't look good. The numbers don't look good, and you have to wonder if it's because they're not in the confines of the Dome. No real good road victories for Dino Babers besides maybe the one at Virginia Tech 2 years ago. He needs to pick up a signature win on the road, and this season is a perfect chance to do it.
Who knows? They almost went down to Clemson and beat them in Death Valley last year, but besides that, they haven't really stayed competitive on the road. It's been pretty embarrassing going down to another stadium and losing by 40. Dino needs to turn that around.
Well, almost only counts in horseshoes and hand grenades, unfortunately, not in football. The reality of this program is this. The Orange have not been to back-to-back bowl games in a decade at this point. This year, there is a chance to change that. But what should the reality of this program be if Syracuse actually wants to build a sustainable winner? Can this be a team that gets close to 8, 9, maybe a double-digit season every now and then, or is it more like 6 or 7 wins, Adam?
You know, I think 6 or 7 wins with the way this current roster, the schemes, the way that the team is constructed, I'm pretty sure that's probably where this program is going to be stuck around. I think Dino really needs to change things up. I know the NIL is the big talk in college football right now, but that needs to change as well. They got to get better players.
At best, this team could be a cusp bowl game team, 6-7 wins. They're in a very competitive division. They're in Central New York. It's very hard to recruit. There's nothing really Dino Babers can do in that regard. He's done well developing under-recruited players. They just need to continue to build from that strategy.
Syracuse, that 10-win season in 2018 feels like a lifetime ago, and it might be a while before Syracuse fans see another one in Central New York. Thank you so much for watching Cuse Countdown tonight. The Orange are off this weekend, but they're back in action against Virginia Tech next week. We'll see you then, and enjoy the game.